don't think I'm ever happy with the amount of money I'm making. Always on a Friday, I find myself experimenting with different entry techniques. In this system here, I'm building a 15-minute scalping system, and I'm running the Heikin-Ashi. And when Heikin-Ashi is down, it's going to be black, and when it's up, it's going to be green. And I put a darker green on top because that's just the range of the actual time frame. This is a half-hour chart, and I put in a 50. This is 50 pips here, and this is the 25-yard line, and this is the 50-yard line, and these are 10 pips. So I can see this 5-pip window here, and I can see, like, when the market's going up. This is a mechanical trading system. The rules are, and there was when you get this is a 20-pip bar, so you can just see on the grid you got it. Now you could have a stop above this, and I think the place to get in would have been here. So a buy stop here. Yeah, the rules are when it's black, you're putting in buy stops, and when it's this color, you're putting in sell stops. And they're trailing sell stops. So every 15 minutes this is going up. If you're not on the long train, you're looking to get on the short train at the next stop. So here's a 20 pip range. You got a sell stop here, you get picked up. And if you got a 20 pip stop, you survive the whatever happened during these 30 minutes. Because we could have chopped up and they could have taken you out. Now this is a big black bar. There's nothing you can do. When the market goes into this size, if you're not on the 1-minute chart, getting short on this 30 minutes. So there's a whole world living inside of here on the 1 minute. There's 30 bars in there. So fractally speaking, of course, on a 30-minute bot, you're going to have at least a 20 pip stop, maybe 15. But thinking a little bit wider because you're going to make more pips. So when the market is, if you miss this entry here, maybe I'm just not making this clear, but you know, this is a counter entry system. In other words, as the market's going up, you know, most people are, if you're long, they got the protections in, and you're going to get picked up here, and then you're just like, okay, you made money because you were counter trend entry. Now you could have run sell limits in front of the market that lasted 15 minutes too. That'd be a little more aggressive, and of course if that's true, then you've got to pick a stop that you're comfortable with. So as the market's nudging up, and you could have it all on one key, that may be the way to go, because if the market is in a 20 pip range, you want to sell a stop here, but what if it spikes up 15 and 30? And you've got a hard 40 stop. But this is kind of like, you know, this is front running in the market. 15 minutes in front of the market. Every time you hit that key, it's putting in 3 tickets. It's putting in a, okay, I'll get in if we go this way. But what if we get one last gasp out of this puppy? So it's going to lock in. Let's say your maximum, you're trying to make, say, 20 pips. So you have a 8 pip stop here, a sell limit here, and a sell limit here, and this one's got a bigger stop. So you're risking like 16 pips, and you're risking 8 pips, and this, the one that you're risking 8 pips is going to make, say, 12, and this one's going to make this. And so you keep dropping that, and it's going to look like this as it's marching in front of the market. When you get this big guy here, when it's going up like that, you could press the sell stop with the sell limit, but maybe wait for a smaller bar. It's always going to be better to punch the key on a small bar of 20 pips than it is to do anything during this, this 30-minute period here. So if you didn't have the trailing buy stop stacking up here and say every 15 minutes you're punching the key, you're going to get a big, nice scalp, a juicy 10 pip scalp here, and you're going to make the extra 20 if you let it play out. And if you have a half-hour script, right, you're going to have maybe this guy's still here, or this is a 1-hour script. It's still there, and it gets a shitty fill, right? And you're going to get like, okay, there you go, right? You just, yeah, you made 10 pips, but wow, you know, after they went up, when they went up here, maybe they came back. Of course, your stop would have been 20 pips out here. You never would have got stopped out. And if you press that same key, the one that's going to buy every half hour, you've locked in there, and the stop is here, and you never get stopped out. So a trailing 15-minute half hour, I guess it depends how often you're going to come to the system. Now, on the 15, if you trade 15s on the 15-minute scripts on the 15, then it's going to look like this. Changes to the 15-minute chart. I'll zoom out one level because otherwise it's going to be pretty chunky. But if you just kept pressing every 15 minutes without the limits, you could still have limits up here, but that's still kind of aggressive because this is a passive entry system. This is like you know, just order flow entry, kind of go with the flow. So in this instance here, it would have been, if you see black, you put in a buy stop. And of course, if you see a small green bar, which means you're under 10 pips, you're definitely putting in the 10 pip stop scalpers. So you make 10 pips, you got a 5 pip stop on this stuff. And you make you make a couple bucks here. This, you could see this coming. If you looked on the other time frame, you could definitely see there was a big black on the 1 hour. And when you also, another thing is, the bigger the tail here, the more vacuum that's forming underneath. So definitely be punching the key every 15 minutes. Of course, the beauty of the system is you don't get filled on these, right? Because this keeps evaporating, but then you finally get filled. You finally get tagged on this entry here. And see, that's why on the 15-minute, you got to press the button every 15 minutes to make the most amount of money trading. Because what I'm trying to say is you've really got to be sitting there hitting the button, because these orders, of course, you don't want these orders to be stops anymore, because you don't want to get caught up in this late entry and then have them rip it back and you get chopped. From the sell limit side picture of it, if you hand place sell limits up at the completely obvious, painfully obvious 50-yard line with a 10 pip stop, right, you have those pendings there. You can still have sell limits up here to catch the stupid entries, and buy limits down here to catch these stupid entries. And you can sit there and hand place orders if you just want to pluck 10 pips out of the market all day long here. Every time it just comes down, and you can see the range here too. You can see that we've been there. Of course, it didn't close down there. And you got your pretty triangle, and then here your buy stops don't get filled, but here, look at this double entry. If you pressed a half-hour script and a 15, say, or you just kept pressing the button, right? Every 15 minutes you're pressing the button. And look at this beautiful 10 pips out of the gate, and I set these scripts in here to make 39 pips max. So actually the way I set it up was I put 9 keys. There's 9 hotkeys. So you could press all 9 if you really love the trade. And the first key is set to just be a scalp with a tight stop. And the next one, the stops start at like 5. And then the worst stop is like 14. By the time you get through 9 keys, and this 5 is going to make 10. So this is double your money, and by the time you get here, I think you're at like 37 or something. And I'm notching this up. Every time this goes up one key button, this goes up for another 4 pips of profit. So it's a linear scale out system, and it's a linear expanding stop. So the stop gets worser it goes from 5 pips stop. So say you got in here, say the market's right here right now, you one key. Okay, so it puts in this gets in 1 pip above current. So the buy stop is here and your first protection is here. Now on this last key, which is the worst trade, but it makes 30, this 14 stop is going to make 37 pips. I'm sorry, this is a 14 stop here. I guess I screwed that up, but here, let me start over here. Yeah, no, it's, once you start thinking, okay, so in a perfect world, right, you pull the trigger here, and you got a 5 pip stop. Well, they stopped you out, right? But you pulled the trigger again. Of course, that's presupposing you literally nailed it right there. You're not waiting for it to take out this black. Anytime you see black, you're already thinking, okay, maybe there's a buy, right? I mean, you're always ready for both keys. You got both keys in your hand at all times. Of course, on the, I'm just speaking of stop entry here in the perfect world, buy stops are stacking up. The 14 stop here is going to make about that. That's your best. 1 key's donated to this trade. So you're risking, say, this to make about that. I guess almost 3 times your money. Of course, starting out of the gate, I'm risking 5 to make 10. And at the end, it's 14 to make 37. Or I could set this higher, but I could just keep, if these are 15-minute scripts, I'm going to punch the button here for the sells. In other words, I'm already out of this trade. And if I've been hitting the buy keys, looking for a bounce trade here, in other words, big black wick on that, I'd probably would have traded this bounce here. And here's a place to get short. So you got to have a little flexible flyer thought about it. So I will have to use a sell key. I had a sell here I was running on Friday. So this is when we got this beautiful top bottom. We tagged and bagged that, and there was one last gush down. And of course I put in buy stops here, and there's a slight drift, but coming into the opening on, I already have a signal to just place buy stops now. On the 15 always, and if we plunge again, so anytime the market plunges, even like this, I put a buy stop in, another plunge every 15, I'm putting buy stops in. And of course, this isn't the best trade in the world, and really kind of get trapped there. A lot of people don't trade at that time of day. When the market's on fire, if you go to a better, now the same rules would hold true on the half hour. Of course, maybe you'd have a half hour script in there, so you'd take a little more risk. You're going to lock into a little bit bigger time frame. Now, I'll go to the worst. Yeah, I'll go half hour where I just was, and I'll just zoom out one level. Yeah, I'll go the worst, Phil. 1 hour. So on the 1 hour world, you don't get a lot of chances to get long this puppy. Of course, these are good trades. You had 3 hours to get long here, and when it's big black, you definitely want to put buy stops in. And when it's big tails on there, sell stops. Of course, there's not a lot of good counter trend trades here. Here's the only good pullback. You know, at this point, but if you're trading both directions at all times, in other words, if the market's not pulling back and you're like, you know what, I don't think it's coming back, just go for the other key punch. You can always, here you really can't trade this 150 pip move here because, well, you wouldn't got filled on your sells till here. So you would have made money, right? You would have made money on your, just keep hitting the sell key when it's going up, sell stop. And you would have pulled, you know, whatever pips here. You would have actually made, you know, 50 pips there. And you would have definitely made the 39. I set the thing to 39, 14 stop on the 39 script, and the tighter scalp is a 5 to make 10. So with 9 buttons running, and you could punch all those buttons at once if you thought, hey, you know, this thing's like, this is it. Price doesn't get much better than that, and you're just having to manage. Of course, there's no trailing stops on this thing, because if you're going to hit those first 2 keys, the second key is going to make 14 pips. So you're going to make 10, 14, 10, 14, 10, 14, 16. If you're going to go 4 pips linear exit on each key. And here's like, okay, if you wanted, I wouldn't do it. I'd go to the 15-minute. You want to go to whatever chart is the cheapest place to get in. Time frame wise, 15-minute chart is about as good as it gets spread wise to price pulse wise. Here, you know, there's not too many places to get on the. Now here you'd be loading the sell key. Like, the bigger this vapor lock beneath. Same thing here. The more you're putting in the sells, anticipating the reversal. And of course, on the smaller time frame, you could have jumped on the long trade. I'm sure on the 15-minute train, you could have got in on black. But you only want to get in on the blacks. Here you'd have to put in bigger take profits. If you're running on the 1 hour, you're going to be looking to make, you know, anywhere to like 100 pips, but you're risking 30. You know, I mean, the idea that you're going to make 300 pips with a 5 pip stop, I guess, but hell, you know, by then, if the market moves 300 pips, it doesn't do it in a straight line. There's plenty of chances to get on the other train. So the 15-minute train comes, you know. Now that can be a little dicey, because if you get to the 5-minute train, you're like, hey, the train's it's like a, you know, it's a rickshaw. You know, it's not, you're not going too far. Here's a nice vapor lock entry, big black, buy stops, nice scalp here. Not so much. Here, not so much. Here's a great scalp. Now, here's just a classic thing. It's down, 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 down. Never makes a higher high, but the first time it does, kabango. So here, just, you know, I mean, just damn. And when you're on this ride, if you're looking to the left, you know you can keep hitting the buy key with like a complete idiot. So this is this is basically, you know, as clean as I could get. I take the idea of a candle, but turn it into a bar. So this is like paint bars that I had from TradeStation years ago. And I had dreams about paint bars. I found it just fascinating beyond all get out, that you could just literally mechanically trade this thing and just look at your screen and go, okay, which button do I hit? And of course, if you're buying blacks, you would have got in on these pullbacks. There was only 3 hours, 1 hour, 2 hour pullbacks. That was your only entry. Here's a pullback. So here you had buy stops running. Even after you got filled on this, you're still buying. So as you're making money on the sell side, you're hitting the other key, right? Because it could turn around at any time. Who cares, right? Now, how many times you hit that button, I'm going to find out Sunday night. So I'm running the first version of this stop bot. I would call it the Heikin-Ashi stop bot. So there's this guy that does these algorithmics, right? He worked for the big house. So I have to send him this video. Yeah, I don't know. I hate to pick on people, but you can hardly resist. But yeah, this is the concept. I'm using this keyboard here, and the way I programmed this was, and this is like just easy peasy hotkey. This is the way it's set up right now. Is since I believe that it's a buy low sell high thing, I had to put the buy stops. I had to put the buy stops here. So this button is, they're all set to 15 minutes right now because I really want to scalp the market, like very, very tight to the market, and test this out. So here's a 5 pip stop on this with a 10 pip take profit, and this is going to be the sell key because it's sell high, buy low. So as the market's going up, I'm getting underneath with these sell stops here. So just keep punching that key. Now this is going to be the risk 6 pips to make 14, and this key is going to be risk 7 to make 16, and risk 8 to make, I guess I'm adding 4 to that. 20. I'm going up in increments of 4 on my take profit. So I get to 20, then I get to 24, then I get to X. By here I should be at 37, I think. Yeah, I don't know if I wrote this down. I thought I kept track. Actually, I had to put the spread in there, so I had to. Yeah, I'm at 37 there. By 14. Now if I go up by, no, if I go by 4s, I'll be at 46. So at 46 pips would take me through one of these plunges. Of course, you could program all the way out to here, but I didn't want to get too close to these keys because they go to, I wanted to keep these guys separated. And you could actually make a mistake here and hit the buys and sells. In other words, when the market goes sideways, you could just hit all these keys and walk away. Or the news is going to come out. Just hit all these keys. Of course, the spread might kill you on some of these because say this has got a, of course, this could be a 50 pip stop on this key. So it's kind of like a bottomless pit. This could be the 25. So these could be psycho risky orders. I try to make these just linear straight across so the stop runs like, for all these buttons here, the stop is pretty much gets worser that way. But the take profit side of it is just completely linear. The angle. Now the other option is to make the stops on these keys be like, okay, now it just really falls out. But the take profit side is like, okay, scalp, and then just, so you could put a curve of that in, curve of SPY, a curve of something. Or the other option is, of course I wouldn't recommend it, you could put hard stops in here. Like you could anger trade it, I suppose. 20 pips. Now, if you set the keyboard like that, and then of course this has got to be still a scalp though. You can't just, now you could set, here's another thing, you could set these to different time frames, but the thing is that when the market's moving and you're babysitting it and you're putting in these buy stops, or you have sell limits running in front of that last a certain amount of time, you have to figure every time you hit this button, what does that button do? Now, this is something that doesn't occur to you until maybe you've blown the account up, or maybe you've come up with a plan that, you know what, that's not such a good idea. Like, you're so bullish that you just keep hitting this button. And of course, once they fill these orders, don't forget, you could be wrong. They could fill these orders, and the cup could not be a handle. It could just be a you know, a subpoena in the mail. You're being sued, right? So of course, if your limit orders are down there, you're like, yeah, but I know I'm a defensive stop entry trader, but I put a big monster bank down here, some psycho scalp thing. And that's the other way to approach it. So I'm always thinking what could happen. Like this could be But I would actually put this on another keyboard. This whole concept of buying, like here's the market right now, just kind of like doing nothing, and then you got some crazy grid thing where it's going to buy down here to scalp and whatever not, and the retraces to here. It literally doesn't even play the whole retrace. It's just nothing but a psycho order bank. Now this stuff does work, but I must say, you know, it's like the dollar yen the other day. It was just kind of plodding along, and all of a sudden it was, and then it was just whatever. And now somebody made money on that, or even in the guy that hit the buy button here and just kept hitting buy stop entry, he wrote it back. So if you were quick enough on the draw, of course, when we went down on that yen and everything that ever went down, the problem is what you can't see on your screen, because you only see the bid, you just can't see the ask was like this. So even though the market was down here, they were asking 20 pips on my broker, I think, for a couple nanoseconds. And so if you were in that trade, you would have got stopped out. But there was certainly a pause on the 1 minute when the first moment the stops tightened up. I'm sure if you went to the 1 minute chart there, you could see where you could just keep hitting the buy key like a complete idiot, and you could have wrote it the other way. But yeah, that's how I'm configuring the system, because I do want to trade the 15-minute chart. It's just too much fun, and it's too low risk to resist. And from the 5-minute standpoint, even on this system, which is this is the gold market, without the other thing. But in other words, when it's black like this, you're just hitting the buy stop key. And here's more buy stop key on the 5-minute, but you're just punching that key like you can't believe, right? Just every 15 minutes, here's a buy, right? Here's a buy, okay, you lost. Here's sells. Well, here's the sells too. So you're running the sell. Every time it's going up, you're ratcheting in on sells. Of course, you do need to look a little bit left on this. Now, here's the 15-minute. Buy, stop, sell, buy, sell, and never get filled. But hopefully you're long from this plunge, and this is a $5 system here. This is $5 on gold. Here would be your buy stops. Maybe you got about, I don't know how many here. Buy stops are stacking up. That's the 15. A little more work, a little less risk. Now the other one would be go to the half-hour gold. Of course, you don't see the range here on the bar. I don't have the bar on top of this one yet. Just that's the close. So actually, this is not the true range. When the market is plunging here, you need to be hitting the buy stop key, which is kind of ridiculous, but you're not going to get filled here, so you're not losing. The moment that thing reverses, certainly these quiet ones are going to be the better entries for your stops. But you could have traded, you definitely could have, during that plunge, of course, you wanted to get short on these guys here. On the half hour, here was your small green. You got your sell stops stacking up on that. So you're definitely counter. Right now you're short, but you're looking to get long. Anytime you get the nice pullback. Now the 5-minute, you got to be pretty much almost at the market on this thing. But look at this, nice 15-minute. Script is filled, boom. Still no fills till you get up here, and at least you scalp that. And here you got buy stops running. Of course, the spread went to about $5 on close here, so can't touch it now. But let's see, go to the 4-hour. Not that I would put that kind of risk and spend that amount of time on the 4-hour, but if you look at the 4-hour without considering the range on gold, there wasn't too many places to trade this thing. Here was some buy stop stacking up for a pop, some sells. You're kind of getting whipsawed here. Here's your only good entry. $5 risk, boom. This is a little higher risk, but you know, you want to have some hand place limits here to get back at the starting gate, or you're just pressing the buy key. Well, the time that's black, you're hitting that buy key. Now you could make the argument you're going to hit the buy key here too. Well, that's about it. That's how stupid trading is. Here you're hitting the buy key, but you're not losing any money. Or you're hitting the sell key, you're going with the black. And of course, you on this, the ultimate way to trade this is, you know, this is you're going to pick maybe the half hour, and you're going to get in on. This is in sell mode. You're looking for places where it's going to be white on the 1 hour. So if you zoom out, here's your only places, not white, but green. So when the market's tanking, you got 3 hours to get short. You got 1 hour to get short. You got to hit that sell key right there. Here you're running sell stops this whole time, because you still got this one last plunge here. This climax here is this, and you just never get, a chance to get on the train, but you're still in sell mode the whole time. And here you're hitting the sell key, counter entries, and just sell on stops. I suppose you let them stack up. Of course, that's going to be the thing. How long do the orders last? Now, 15 minutes across the board on this thing. You know, that's, if you're going to walk away from some of these trades because it's the middle of the night, you could set the, if you know this in advance, if you know you have the patience, you could set these keys to run for, I would say, no more than 2 hours. Now, I'm not going to set this for 2 hours, but maybe when I get past, well, in other words, if you're going to set your key for 2 hours, you may want to have the 14 pip stop, and this maybe is a 1 hour key. But now you're getting into a whole nother problem, that how do you look at this board and just say, oh, well, don't forget this is the 2 hour key? I don't really like to think like that. Maybe 1 hour. How often? You really can't get to your platform within the next hour. Well, yeah, maybe you went to sleep. But of course, a lot of these moves, if you think you're going to miss them, you typically jump on the next plunge. In other words, in your fantasy look back of the market, when you look at these markets, you know, after hours, if you take a look at any chart, you think to yourself, well, you know, hell, look at this trade I could have done. Here's a half hour. Now, if you're loading the wagon on sells here, you got maybe half hour, 1 hour. Like, here's the problem. This doesn't over zoom on me. Okay, here's the problem. If you had to actually say, well, okay, you follow this rule system, mechanical entry, here's your stop entry, you got in here. Okay, so the keyboard, you need to know when the market's open what button you're going to hit, and how long that order is going to last, and what can you tolerate as far as as a bad entry, because we all want to buy down here, right? But now if you're going to trade mechanical stop entry, it's trailing here. Like, this isn't the best trade in the world, right? And they kind of trapped you. And this is the Asian Open, so they're going to establish this range anyways. But when they plunged here, you did pretty good. You buy stop, you see black, you hit the buy stop key. And here, you really punch it quite a bit. This is a half hour, and you got a 1 hour maybe. And then you get this nice little rally here. Now, this maybe not. You don't want it maybe of course, this is Asian. I mean, this is before the European Open. And they pull back, and you can lock in, say, here, but this is what I'm thinking. When you're actually sitting here trading, and you see the markets down here, the last thing you want to do is get filled up here. So ideally 15 minutes, half hour max, right? Because you want to take advantage of as much of this move as possible. I can't imagine. Okay, in the real world, it pulls back, or maybe you've even got a pending just sitting at the 50-yard line like a complete idiot. But if you want to make 50 pips, and I mean really put everything you got into that trade, 1 hour max. Now, these guys are going to get filled here. They're going to still be sitting there, half hour max maybe. I just, every time I look at it, I just think, yeah, half hour max. And maybe that's going to be your wider stop. It has to be, and it has to be your wider take profit to some extent too. Because typically, in other words, if you had a trailing thing here, like, okay, but you never made that big number. So it's better to let these things disappear and don't be so lazy as to not just come back here and just every half hour, because every half hour you're going to say hit the, if the market's down here, maybe you're hitting that key. And hopefully these guys have disappeared. And here is a rally that you can't see a lighter. I didn't make these range bars so they change color, which I really didn't want to do that because then it becomes too complicated. So really I'm depending on this up fractal. Now, when this closes up, you can lock in your sell stops in this downtrend, because when it goes up, you can put a sell stop in, start locking in, and go with the flow here. Here you're in buy mode. You're still in buy mode here, but you're also hitting the other keys. So it's almost like this is an always in system. It's like a hedge system. So even though you went short here and you didn't get, maybe you did take a loss on that half hour wider stop, you made up for it because you kept hitting the buy key. So there's always a trade. Right now you're hitting the buy stop key. It's too late to get on the sell train, I think. Here you had a narrow bar, 10 pip, under 10 pips, so maybe sell key. Yeah, maybe we're going down, you know, it is dark. So you're really in trend sell mode. But you're also, when you get a big smash down, buy stops. But guess what? Just keep hitting the sell key. I just go with it. And that's about how it is. Now here, buy stop key, yeah, maybe. I did trade this on the 5-minute coming into the close because I had a little pullbacks. Every time I got a pullback, every time it's come down like that, buy stop, sell stops, price pulse up, sell stops. Now this, it just keeps selling that puppy, and when it finally turns around, you know. Now on the 5-minute time frame, which is about as thin as you want to slice it, I think, unless you're totally just can't get out of this. Can't get out of this mode here. Let me go to the 5-minute chart. So this is for scalpers, anonymous. And time frame does make a difference, and so does your stop, I think. I guess I'm just being sarcastic. So here was my buy stops because I had the pullback and I was scalping it. So, and so on here, this world is pretty much, you're just nailing it, literally. Buy stops here, stacking up. And since this is, you're waiting for like 3 bars before your orders disappear. You never get filled until here, and you have the sell stops running. So ultimately, you're on the 5-minute chart, and you're just pressing this button, sell stop, you make your scalp. Buy stop, you make your scalp. Now your bigger orders, you would have had to just, you have to keep to the small targets until you see something that you like, okay, well, this, you're hitting the sell key here, and maybe you got some 20, now I've set my 9 pip stop to get out at 26 pips, so that's about the 5th key in. So if you're really feeling it, you keep hitting the sell key here, and maybe you're hitting whatever you think, you know what, this thing is just going to tank. Of course, on the 15 is going to be your best, because you can get your brain around the fact that every 15 minutes that order's disappearing. So your sell stops here don't get filled till this 10 pip. And if you're trading the pullbacks here, if you're just hitting the buy button on any kind of pullback, just this one little baby pullback, hit the buy key. And you could make that a different color key, but the problem is I think that if once I lose track of where the market's pausing at and close, this is an inverted hammer. You know, this is a doji of some type here, just before this plunge. So if you're hitting a sell key here, you definitely cleaned up some pips there. Of course, the volatility, you know, when it heats up, you want to go for the more volatile key maybe, because when this thing heats up, then maybe you're going to go for this side of the keyboard, but you're going to keep everything on the 15-minute basis. You don't want to be involved. I just don't think you want to be involved, and the broker is dictating how much money you can make, because some brokers are not going to let you get in on a stop tighter than 3 pips. So you're already in a bad situation. So when it closes down like this, you want to hit that key and lock in. You could be wrong. Yeah, I could keep tanking. Like here, you lock in. Okay, they take you out, but you're selling again. So it's like you're constantly in the market. And the nice thing about some brokers are going to let you go zero margin on this stuff. So until the market breaks either way. Now here, if you buy, sell, and then finally, boom, you're getting stopped out of your tighter stops. And yeah, there's no limits in this system because you got to babysit the market on this one. Now the limit ones, you could set it and forget it and just have your limits here up all night long here, because you know that this is definitely the resistance up here. You can still do all your other analysis, but this is like momentum stop entry, I guess I'd call it. And you got the you know which button to push here. So you had the buy stops here, and yeah, you'd make too much money here. Here's the buy stops, here's sell stops, and I'm going to put buy stops in Sunday night if it plunges, and I'm not going to sell into this anymore. If I'm short here, imagine the market's up. Of course not. The spread's at 5, almost 6 pips here on close on this broker. But yeah, that's my mechanical entry system hotkey enables. I'm using this Cherry keyboard, the G86 Cherry, and this is what McDonald's uses. Come on.